Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're a small group, and I'm a little uncomfortable using a microphone, but we're televising these programs on BevCam, so it's advantageous for them to have all of us mic. So when we get to the public input and the questions and responses, we have microphones on either side for the audience, so if you get up and identify yourself and ask questions, we'll be able to handle it in a much smoother fashion. My name's Al Agenziano. I'm the interim superintendent of schools, and before we begin, I wanted to give you some introductions. To my left, we have Mayor Mike Cahill, members of the school committee, and Anne Marie Chesa and Chris Silverstein are chairing the task force on middle school and getting input from all other members as well as the community. We have Paul Manzo, the chairman of our school committee and president, Lorinda Vishnik, and Dave Manzi. And when Matt Kavanaugh comes in, we'll pull up a chair down the end and we'll make him comfortable. On my side here, at each one of these forums, we've asked the principal of the school, in this case Susan Snyder, and the adjustment counselor is not available, but Erin Fitzpatrick is the adjustment counselor at Ayers, and she will do the Hannah as well as the Ayers for us. Stacy Busick is our special education director, early childhood coordinator, so any questions regarding PKK, special ed, Stacy can answer that. And finally, Matt Posker, our present middle school principal, can respond to any questions regarding middle school. So for us this evening, it's a window of opportunity. When you look at Mass School Building Assistance Authority and you go online, there are communities that may have to wait 7 to 10 years for an elementary school, a middle school. I talked to the superintendent the other day from Billerica. He's in dire need of a high school. He may not be on the list this year. So there are many communities that don't have the opportunity Beverly has. We have a wonderful opportunity here to design, build, and facilitate a school, and the whole purpose of these forums is to decide on the grade configuration. We presently have a grade 6 to 8 configuration, which we can duplicate with the new school, or we can add to our taking the 5th grade out of the elementary schools, which are pretty packed, and make room. So that decision is a school committee decision, it's a community decision, and we're trying to get as much input as we can from the community. We had a group from the Accountability Office in the state come out last May, and on page 39 of their report, which is in draft, it specifically says that we're inadequate for space K-5 to do the STEAM issues, science, technology, art. We need more space. Stacy will talk about the need for full-day kindergarten. It's a need throughout the country. So all of these things will be part and parcel of our discussions, and when it comes down to the final decision, it's the school committee that makes that decision. So the school side, we're just going to each do like a 5-minute slot, turn it over to the mayor, and then the task force, chaired by Anne Marie and Chris, and they can count on anybody else they wish to respond, and then we'll open it up to questions. Okay? Thank you. Susan?
Oh. Hey everybody, I do know most of you here. They've asked me to just speak a little bit about the space at our school and what our needs will be going forward. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about what we currently have in the building. For the most part, we have 3 of each grade level. And currently we have 2 full-day kindergarten classes And our half-day students are actually at a different school because we didn't have space for them this year. So they'll be coming back to us for first grade. So we have 2 full-day kindergartens to go over right now, 4 first grades, 3 second grades, 3 third grades, 3 fourth grades, and 2 fifth grade classrooms, as well as 2 self-contained special education classes. So we have a total of 17 classrooms, full-size classrooms, and they're all in use at the moment. And our special education classes are in smaller rooms, which works because they're smaller class sizes. When we were looking at a need for another 5th grade here for next year, and we'll probably have to take a space like the science room to accommodate an additional 5th grade class for next year. So our school is fully utilized, and we don't have a lot of room to grow, but we'll always make whatever we need to make work, and we can make it work in the meantime too. We do want to thank you for coming out, and thank you for always putting your trust in us to take care of your kids and try to do the best we can to provide a quality education and a really safe and happy environment for them. So we'll always do that, but if we did have some more space in the building, it would give us an opportunity to open the conversation for full-day kindergarten for everyone. Currently, we offer full-day kindergarten, but there's also half-day kindergartens in the district. So in a nutshell, we are at full capacity at the moment. We'll always make it work, but given a little bit extra space, we could consider some other options that would benefit our youngest kids. And that's about all I have to say about that. And I'd like to introduce Erin Fitzpatrick.
Hi, my name's Erin. I'm here for Deanna Krinsky, who couldn't be here tonight. She's the adjustment counselor for Hannah. We brought today the pamphlets from, they're actually from Chipwood, from a book that he created called Yardsticks. And we use this right now at the elementary level really to kind of look at, we have the pamphlets K through 5 that we use. Today I brought the 5th and 6th grade developmental pamphlets because some of you may not have older children. You may have preschool and kindergarten age students. So really just looking developmentally in the future for your child, or if you have older children and youngers as well that may attend a different model middle school, really looking at 5th and 6th grade characteristics, socially and emotionally, I just thought we thought might be helpful for you. 5th graders are beginning to mature physically and socially more, perhaps now more than in decades past, and so their developmental needs might shift a little bit, and we do see that sometimes at Ayers, and I'm sure here at Hannah too, that some of our 5th graders by this time of year are beginning to almost outgrow sort of that elementary model. Their emerging adolescent needs for autonomy, competence, different activities, the ability to be more independent in their learning and thinking really start to shape by mid-year 5th grade. So really having an opportunity to be somewhere where the staff and the resources are really developmentally appropriate for what they need academically, socially, and emotionally is terrific. I think that you'll hear more from Stacy and Matt in terms of more specifics about that, but the adjustment counselors will be at all of these trainings just to sort of talk a little bit about that developmental piece and answer any questions that you might have about that.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Kowalski. I'm principal of the middle school here. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to talk to you about the middle school grade configuration. I think Dr. Argenziano said that. You've heard the word before, and the school committee has done a great job going out and investigating what's going on. But the great word for us tonight is opportunity, because this is a tremendous opportunity for us this time to positively impact and shape the direction of our schools and our community as we move forward. The goal as educators, the goal for the school committee and the teachers here is to create safe, small learning environments for all of our students. With a 5-8 model, we would like to have separate academic environments for our 5-6 students as well as our 7 and 8 students. They will spend the vast majority of their times in these separate academic areas. There will be some common areas that may be shared, such as the gym, the cafeteria, an art classroom, but those would not be done crossing over classes. Those would be done in their own specific grade configuration. About 3 years ago, the school committee had a task of putting out an ad hoc committee to investigate various grade configurations. I was fortunate enough to be a member of that committee. One of the things that came out of that is a tremendous amount of research we did looking at various grade configurations. One of the big pieces that we've learned is the importance of transitions and to limit the amount of transitions. By limiting the transitions, when you limit the transitions, academic achievement of those students in that building increased. A 5-8 middle school allows us the opportunity to build more community and support within a 4-year span during the period of time in one building. I'm pretty biased, and I'm free to admit that I believe I have the hardest working PTO in the district. They do a tremendous amount of work, and it's a small group that does a lot of that work. I'm sure I'm speaking for them when they say the opportunity that's afforded to them to have 4 grade spans working together to support a middle school certainly positively impacts what goes on at the middle school. The middle school philosophy promotes connections within a small learning community. This philosophy can be supported utilizing a 5-8 model where there will be a 5-6 lower school and a grade 7 and 8 upper school. The grade 5-6 lower school model will consist of 2-person teams. Approximately 50 students per team. There'd be 2 teachers on that team. One teacher would teach math and science, the other teacher would teach English and social studies. The grade 7-8 model, upper school model, consists of 4-person teams as we currently have at the middle school. Again, as the literature and the research showed, developmentally, it's more appropriate for students in grade 5 and 6 to be together and students in grade 7 and 8 to be together. Another advantage is the curriculum. An advantage of the 5-8 configuration is that it allows for stronger, more consistent implementation of the curriculum within the lower school and the upper school models. In addition, the experience of the grade 5 teachers with the grade 4 curriculum will strengthen the vertical curriculum articulation. At the middle school, and much like we do here at all the elementaries, the plan includes the opportunity for all students to participate in our expressive arts programs. This would include computers, tech ed, PE, health, art. We'd also be looking to expand our foreign language opportunities into grade 5 as well as expand what we currently offer in grade 6. This model will allow for daily, consistent instruction in science and social studies in grade 5 and 6. We're fortunate, as we all know, to have a tremendous fine arts program here in this district. Students would have the opportunity to participate in band or chorus and have this built into their daily schedule. All students would have access to our extracurricular opportunities, and we're currently in the process of investigating expanding our interscholastic middle school athletic program, thus further advancing the school culture and promoting more opportunities for our students. Another aspect to consider is the opportunity that this affords our special education programming. It will create more continuity and consistency with all the programs at the middle school. Ms. Busick will expand upon this further, but it gives Beverly students the opportunity to go to school in their home district, as they should. We all know and recognize that we need a new building. What we have to decide is what is best for us at this time. If it's a 6-8 model, we're familiar with that plan, as Dr. Argenziano pointed out. We'd certainly like to continue to improve upon that plan if necessary, but we are familiar with this. A 5-8 model allows us the opportunity for increased programming and opportunities for our students. In addition, it provides the elementary schools the opportunity to investigate expanding their programs due to the additional space that they will have. Yet, we do recognize that there are concerns that need to be addressed. Buses, the popular grade 5 plays. How are we going to limit contact with older students? What about extended daycare opportunities that are afforded at the elementary school level at this time? And is there going to be recess in grade 5? All great questions, all things that we have the opportunity to plan for as we go forward. As we prepared for these forums, the school committee and many members of the school went out and visited other middle schools in the area that have grade 5-8 configurations. We went to Linfield, which is the model building for the Mass School Building Association at this time. We went to the Galvin Middle School in Wakefield, which currently has currently they're housed in the old high school that they utilize as a 5-8 configuration, which does not really fit what they have. But they are in the process of building a brand new 5-8 middle school that is addressing the concerns they have with their current model. I also spoke to people at the Swampscott Middle School. Unfortunately, 2 of my children attend the middle school in Swampscott, so I'm familiar with that model that's in place there. All the concerns we talked about with buses and things like that can be addressed. They don't see that as a concern at this time. Instead, we heard many positive stories about what's occurring there. As we said before, the Linfield Middle School was the model school building for the MSBA at the time. At this time, they wish they had built it bigger because of the expansion of their enrollment numbers at this time. They need more space. The principal at the Wakefield Middle School talked about the positive attributes of how the grade 5 students are able to mature quicker, and how the students in grade 8, they've created a program where their grade 8 students go down and tutor in grade 5 classrooms, thus promoting that school community. I think from a big picture standpoint, this is a wonderful opportunity to address issues that we have within this district and to support all of our students at this time. Thank you. Stacy Busick, Director of Special Education.
Good evening. Thank you for coming out tonight. My role here is to really talk to you about this from the special ed director perspective, which is a district perspective, starting with early childhood, because we do facilitate preschool and kindergarten through our department. One of the things in looking at a 5 to 8 configuration is really, and you've heard it from all of us, it's opening up space at the elementary level. I know most of you probably are in the elementary school buildings, and you've seen that they're at capacity in the use of the space in the buildings. And I have to say that the principals in each building do a really wonderful job at trying to find space anywhere and everywhere to support student learning. With taking the 5th grade out of elementary schools, we can now start to have discussions and consider shifting our kindergarten program from a half-day and full day to a straight full day. So those are things that we have options for moving forward, which we don't have options for right now. We don't have the capacity to go to a full day kindergarten program across the district because we don't have the space for the classrooms. The other things we can start to consider too potentially is keeping kids at the kindergarten level in their home districts. Right now, the kindergarten program is a district-wide program, and some kids start off their kindergarten year in a different school and then need to transition to 1st grade. If you're a preschooler in the district going into our kindergarten program, there's the potential for you to be transitioning 2 or 3 times just based on how we've moved our preschool programs around as well. So I think part of it is really important at the early levels to keep the transitions down for our preschoolers, our kindergartners and our 1st graders moving forward. The other piece we can look at as well at the early childhood level is the number of students we have in the classroom. This year we raised the cap in kindergarten to 22. We were for a number of years at 20. Based on space and the ability of us to keep most of our kindergartners who wanted full day in full day. So we can start looking at that and lowering the number for kindergarten classrooms. So those are a couple of things from the early childhood perspective. And again, right now, we have limitations on what we can do with our programs because of the space availability. From the special ed programming perspective, one of the things that has been challenging in this district is to look at the programming we have and expand it. We've tried to do that at a couple of the elementary schools that have programs and go to a better model of a K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, rather than a K through 2 and a 3 through 5. To lower the numbers for those specialized programs, but we can't do that in all the programs at the elementary level because we don't have the space to do that. One such example is our program at the North Beverly Elementary School. We're looking to expand it because we need to, but in order for us to add an additional classroom, we've got to take away from some other service provider in the building. So the other piece too with our programming at the elementary level, a lot of our service providers are utilizing space that's smaller than they really should be. We have some service providers who are working in hallways, converted storage closets. We have service providers sharing space, which isn't always optimum depending on the groups you have that you're working with or the lessons that are being taught. So those are some things that we would like to start looking at. Also, beyond the programming we have, we'd like to start looking at what programs we don't have in the district to meet the needs of students that we can bring in to better support students. One of my goals is working on decreasing the number of students who go out of district, because I strongly believe that our students should be with us. So with having the space at the elementary level, we can start working on program development to meet the needs of more students. From the 5th grade and 6th grade perspective moving up, going to a 2-person team for 6th grade, I feel strongly that it's more developmentally appropriate for our 6th graders moving up. Having the 5th graders up there, it gives us a lot more opportunity to do more coordinated programming from the special ed perspective. It's also giving the opportunity to really focus more on the developmental skills. And if you look through what Erin talked about in the brochures, you'll see there's similar matches in their developmental needs at those ages. Again, it also will give us the opportunity from the special ed perspective to look more closely at our middle school programming and expand to meet the needs of more students moving forward. We did, Matt and I and other people had gone and looked at some of the schools, and really when we looked at them, there were not negatives out there. I think some of the things that we think about in transitions of students are resilient, kids are resilient, and they do well with the transitions. I think it's the adults that get more nervous about it. I've been in the district for a long time. I've been through school renovations and kids moving around. I've been through school closings, redistricting. In the time I've been here, the past 2 years, I've moved preschool programs. The kids do well. And I think the important thing to think about, particularly when you're thinking about the research that's out there, there's lots of different grade configurations, but most of the research comes down to if you have quality teaching, quality staff, and a quality learning environment, the kids do well. So that's what I have to say for now. And
That's the school side, and I promised we would hold to 30 minutes, so it's about 7:27, so we're on time. So I'd like to turn the meeting over to our mayor, Michael Cahill.
Thanks, Doctor. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Really nice to come out and spend the time. I want to acknowledge at-large City Councilor Matt St. Hilaire for taking the interest as well, and Ward 4 City Councilor Scott Hausman. Thanks for joining us. I've just got a couple of thoughts, and then I'd like to turn it over to my colleagues on the school committee who have some research to share. And then we'll get to you folks as quickly as we can, because we want to make sure that you have a chance to ask questions, share opinions, raise concerns or points that you want to make sure we consider. And I think we all know that there's a lot of interest and some concern with the question of whether we're going with a 6-to-8 or a 5-to-8 and what that means. So that's part of why you've heard some information. We have a lot of experience. We know the 6-to-8 model well, and to learn some things about the 5-to-8 I think is helpful as we look at it all. Also, this is the first of 5 forums, and at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th forums, we are going to have some administrators from some of the districts that Mr. Posca mentioned. Swampscott, Wakefield, and Linfield all have 5-to-8 middle schools, and we've gotten a combination of superintendents and building principals from those districts to agree to come to the last 3 of the forums and share some of their experiences. So some of the questions and concerns that get raised at the first couple of forums, we'll put on their plate and ask them to speak to them. And then if you have an interest in the ability to get to one of the later forums, you will have a chance to do the same. Let's see, what else did I want to share? I think I just want to give you a sense of the calendar. As you know, the process of moving towards building the new middle school has been going on for a couple of years now. And back in the fall, Beverly was invited to enter what they call the eligibility period, and there's a list of requirements that you need to accomplish during the eligibility period. This is one of 8 different steps that we need to complete in order to have a school to walk into and a place for our kids to learn. And as we all know, as wonderful a building as Briscoe is, and I taught in it 30 years ago, some of you went to school there. Dr. Argenziano keeps referring to it as a building that's almost 100 years old, and I'm thinking, no, it's not, but yes, it is. It's getting there. So we know that we need to move with some sense of urgency, but at the same time get our decisions done properly, make our decisions the right way. So there's been talk all along that the building would open by fall of 2017. When we went in and met with the Mass School Building Authority personnel about 3 weeks ago, it was my first meeting with them, I posed that question. I said, you know, we've been targeting fall of 2017 all along. Are we good? Are we on track? And there was some real pause and a lot of thought and some eyes going back and forth among the officials there. And they said to us, you will need to meet every benchmark in the most optimal way to be able to hit that target date. It's going to be a challenge. And I said, we don't want to back off from that. We want to, you know, that's still 3.5 years away. We want to try to hit it. So that's part of why we're having these forums and part of why we set a timetable of the school committee making the decision on grade configuration later next month. We're scheduled to take the vote on this at our February 26th meeting because if we do that, we can then go before the school building authority at their board meeting in late March, and if things go well there, we'll be done with this eligibility period. We'll be invited into what they call the funding pipeline, at which point we can hire a project manager and a designer and do what's called the feasibility study, and that's where we look at Briscoe, because Briscoe is the school that the kids are in now, and likely and hopefully pretty quickly realize that the better option for building the middle school will be over at Memorial, and then we'll need to look at whether the existing building can be incorporated, whether we end up doing a renovation and add-on, or whether we need to do a tear down and rebuild. And you know, getting to and through all of these steps and getting us to, and as I said, there are 8 separate components to this, and that's the second one. So we know that we need to move through these with some degree of efficiency, which again brings us back to why we're doing this now and looking for your input to help, you know, challenge any assumptions that you think need challenging, and have the conversation that will help us move towards a decision in late February. So I'd like to turn it over to school committee members Silverstein and Chesa for their presentation, and then we'll get to you and you can have the chance to ask and say anything you'd like. Here you go.
Hi. 3 years ago, the school committee began to look at grade configuration, to look at our buildings. We had formed a task force, and there were a group of people who went and did studies, visited buildings, and talked about the various different kinds of configurations we could have here in Beverly. The ideal grade configuration, from any of the research you read now, is K to 8. We can't do that. We did build our buildings to be K to 8, and if we tried to do that, we would, it just wouldn't fit. So we then looked back and said, what can we do? We looked at having sister schools, so you would have K 1 and 2 in one building, 3, 4, 5 in another building. We looked at splitting up the 2 middle schools at one point, about 10 or 12 years ago, and putting 5 and 6 in one middle school and 6 and 8, 7 and 8 in the other middle school. So over the years, Beverly has looked at a lot of different types of configurations. But what came out of the ad hoc committee 3 years ago, that the best configuration for here in Beverly was to have our elementary schools be K to 4, have the middle school be 5 through 8, take back McEwen and put our preschoolers there. They can all be together. They're kind of our nomadic little program, and we feel badly. In my 11 years on the school committee, they've been all over the place. And it's not fair to the kids, it's not fair to the teachers, it's not fair to the administration. They need a home. So while a decision has not been made, we decided that we really needed, it's been 3 years, and we needed to investigate it again. We needed to make sure that we heard from all of you, that you knew that this wasn't a done deal. The school committee essentially has one decision to make about this project. About the only decision that we vote on is what configuration it's going to be. So we've visited, we've talked, we've read, we've done a lot of different kinds of research, and now you're hearing some of the benefits of doing the 5 through 8 model. I'm going to have Chris talk about some of the specifics.
Thank you. So there was an ad hoc group that Mr. Posca spoke about that did a lot of work learning about middle schools along the way. And again, like Mrs. Chesa said, that was 3 years ago now. And so we felt like we needed to kind of go back to this question of academically and socially, what is the best model for our kids? So we formed a small task group to work on this question. And then when Mayor Cahill said to us, well, we really should get this vote done by February 26th, it meant that we had to run a little faster. So we've been spending some significant time talking.
Together.
Yeah, together. But I also wanted to thank Mr. Manzo from the school committee and Mrs. Visnick from the school committee, and also Kathy Whitehair and Catherine Barrett for helping us with this project. Because we've all kind of, you know, like PTOs do, right? Many hands make light work. So we split up the work and we got to business. So we scoured different schools ranging from 500 student schools to 1,400 student schools. And it's projected for us in Beverly that by 2017, we're likely to have 1,300 kids in our school if it's a 5 to 8 middle school. So our main question to all of these administrators was, is grade 5 to 8 middle school academically superior to a grade 6 to 8 middle school? So here's what we learned. We learned that the districts who were really happy with their 5 to 8 middle school had these things in common. The layout of the school building supported 2 distinctly separate wings with grades 5 and 6 in one wing and 7 and 8 in another. There's 1 principal typically, and then 2 vice principals, 1 vice principal for each wing. 5th graders either had self-contained classrooms or at most they had 2-person teams. And right now in Beverly, I believe some of our elementary schools have 2-person teams at grade 5 and some don't, right? Okay. So some of our students are already experiencing that model. They also preserved elementary identity for the 5th graders by maintaining recess and other extracurricular events for them. And forgive me for my notes, but I don't want to forget to tell you anything. They also had 4-person teams for grades 6 and 8, 7 and 8, sorry. And they felt that the team model worked best. There was a separate lunch for each grade level, and there was thoughtful transition into the middle school with a solid link between grades 4 and grades 5, so coming into the middle school. There's time spent working with 4th graders, preparing them for the transition to a bigger school. And extracurricular activities remain developmentally appropriate. So, you know, 5th graders were having roller skating nights, and 7th and 8th graders were having dances. There was extra planning. They said that extra planning is crucial when organizing the space, when planning the wings and planning common spaces, and determining how students will travel throughout the building. They said that there needs to be thoughtful planning for transportation, and we ran into a couple of schools who actually did kind of developmental programs for their, not developmental, like learning programs for their 8th graders. We talked to them about, you know, you've earned the right to sit in the back of the bus, but watch out for the 4th, 5th graders, and, you know, keep an eye on them and be their buddies. So they did some kind of leadership stuff on the bus for the 8th graders, which I thought was, you know, really thoughtful. They also said that there needed to be well thought out transitions for students who receive special ed services and transitioning their IEPs from grade 4 to grade 5 and into the middle school. And many of them said that parent input in general to include some of the traditions that come from the 5th grade or the elementary school up into the new building. So in our research, we found no real hard data to reflect that academic scores were better in one configuration over another, but we learned that principals felt that there were positive influences on instruction in the 5 to 8 model, and here's what they had to say about that. The teachers and administrators get to know their students better and understand their needs because they're in the building for 4 years instead of 3. There's not a fast turnaround during a critical time in a student's social, emotional, and academic development. Having students for 4 years allows for demonstration of strong growth. Being able to do cohesive writing programs over 4 years has produced strong development. They learn over time what interventions the students need. The teachers have more opportunities to meet and collaborate, and there's more opportunities for 5th graders to be exposed to expressive arts, technology, science, and social studies. There's also increased leadership roles for 8th graders. I can't tell if this is working. Is it? So along with our research, we came across some interesting practices along the way that some of these schools were doing that were, you know, things for us to think about and things for us to keep in mind in our future planning. Some of the schools had this exploratory foreign language in grade 5, and right now some of you know that we have foreign language for our 6th graders, and So what they were doing is they were letting the 5th graders kind of explore all the foreign languages that they offered, and some of these schools had up to 4 different foreign languages, and they could, you know, learn about them in grade 5 so that when they got to grade 6, and likely probably be learning that language all the way through high school, they had a better sense of what they were choosing. In one instance, all the grades in the school had recess, which I really thought was nice. And there were, again, more opportunities for 8th graders to be leaders by reading with the 5th graders, assisting 5th grade teachers, giving building tours to the upcoming 4th graders. And one of the schools, I have to say too that Mrs. Whitehair and Mrs. Visnick went to Natick to look at their school, because one of the things that they were doing there is they have one-to-one laptops in their 8th grade, so something to think about. What we did discover too, that the schools that were not built to be a 5 to 8 middle school and are unable to substantially separate the 5th and 6th grades from the 7th and 8th graders, they didn't seem to be doing as well. And some of them, like Amesbury, for example, they're considering moving their 5th graders back to elementary school. So, you know, it's something to think about, that, you know, if you don't have the facility to do it and make it work, kind of making 2 substantially separate, smaller schools within one building, it could be a problem down the line, and it sounds like that's what's happening in Wakefield as well. So there's, you know, a lot of debate around the ideal grade configuration, and you could research this for hours and hours on your computer. There's no clear indication, again, that one configuration over another is more appropriate when it comes to results on test scores. Many districts have moved to or are considering K-8 models. And in the research I've been reading, they're saying 6 to 8 is not ideal for many of the reasons that Mr. Posca talked about with the transitions. And what they talk about is when students are transitioning into 6th grade, they see a dip in their scores and their learning. And then when they just start to get back on their feet again in grade 8, it's time to move out to high school. So some students don't even regain their footing until they're in grade 10, which is, you know, maybe why we have, you know, freshman academy at the high school, to help the students at the high school kind of have a solid start, you know. So a lot of the research says that small schools make a difference, and having children over a longer period of time makes a difference. So overall, what can be done to raise academic achievement overall in any school is thoughtful and thorough preparation for transitions, high expectations for learning and behavior, extended time in learning, a robust after-school activity program, quality teachers, and safe schools. And much of this we already have, but we need to make sure that we don't compromise on this. So the school committee, like Mr. Cahill said, the school committee has a vote coming up on the 26th of February where we're going to decide which model we want for our new middle school. And we have an opportunity to take education in Beverly in a new direction and adding space, which is greatly needed. So we need to tell the Mass Building Authority how big we want our new school to be, and we need to have that decided for us to move forward. So I'm urging you to email school committee members and let us know your thoughts. Share your questions with us this evening, and you know, as we go forward, help inform our vote on this, because it's your children who will be using the school. So thank you very much, and I think we're opening it up to questions now. Yes? Come on, somebody break the ice.
So we need to use these microphones, and when you go to them, please, if you would, give us your name and address.
I guess I'll break the ice. Scott Hausman, 27 Appleton Avenue, City Councilor. I understand, and I guess to a large degree, subscribe to the advantages of the 5 to 8 model. I'm particularly interested in what you described in Linfield as for the model 5 to 8 model arrangement, where apparently the building was actually built around that model. How the shared space, like the cafeteria and gyms, gets scheduled when you have 4 different grades. Take lunch, for example. How do they juggle getting a good lunch schedule around 4 different grades for presumably one kitchen and cafeteria? Thank you.
And some combination of us will take any and all questions. And people up here, don't be shy if you've got something to add.
Well, right now, in our elementary schools, we schedule lunch K through 5. So we can certainly do, if we can do a 6th grade configuration in the elementary schools, we can handle, you know, a 4th grade at a middle school. But also, when you build the building to fit this configuration, you have different grades using different staircases. So it may be that the 5th and 6th grade are on the 1st floor, or they may be on one side or the other side, but they use different staircases, they use different hallways. I know that there's concerns about having 5th grade and 8th graders, but I'm sure in your own homes, many of you have 5th graders and 8th graders, and they sit next to each other at dinner. And yes, there may be some squabbling, but on the whole, they get along. And I think that as long as we, you know, move forward thoughtfully, then, and, you know, any questions, as Chris said, any questions you have, you know, we're hopeful that we can come up with a solution for any concerns that you have. But, you know, lunch, I think that should be probably an easy fix.
I just wanted to add to that, Mr. Hausman, I don't think any of the school principals would argue that scheduling isn't difficult in these buildings. And so they have had to have taken a very thoughtful approach to scheduling all of the things that they do, gym and you know, music and lunch and all of the things that happen in the common areas. And like Mrs. Chesa said, the foot traffic through the building is well thought out as well. So it'll be a challenge for the principal of the school to do that, as well as scheduling everything that goes on in the building. In fact, I think it was Linfield that had lots of different schedules going on at the same time, and the principal shared with us that that's a challenge, but they do it, and they seem to do it really well from what we saw. When we were in that building, Mrs. Chesa commented on how quiet it was, and it really felt like learning was taking place, and kids were settled, and you know, it was, yeah, very well done there. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think the question regarding the scheduling is a big question. It is a challenge. Certainly when we saw Linfield, we saw Wakefield, there's a variety of different schedules going on. Usually what we often saw is there's a 5-6 schedule and there's a 7-8 schedule. And then scheduling those common area times such as PE and art, etc. is a challenge. A lot of the schedules might be a 7-block schedule where they would drop one of the classes during the course of the school day. There was a variety of different schedules in place, and it's up to each school or each district to put together the schedule that best fits the needs of the students and what they're trying to accomplish. Certainly if we were talking about a band and chorus activity, we're trying to incorporate that into the school day. The cafeteria and lunch issues were significant as well. In Swampscott, for example, they have grades 5 and 7 sharing lunch together because they have kind of an upper and lower caf going on at the same time. And then grades 6 and 8 share the cafeteria, again, an upper lower model at the same time. So again, as we heard out, when you can plan for these things, when you can try to build it the way you want, you can schedule it the way you want. So, but that certainly will be a challenge going forward.
And I think these types of questions, again, if you can come back to one of the later ones, great. If you can't, we'll pose these questions at the later forums when we have administrators from those districts.
Right.
Good. Yes.
My name is John Taylor. I live at 41 Cole Street. And I've got 6 questions. You want to start with one? Yeah, I'll start with one. There you go. But to Mr. Hausman's question, I thought it was a great question. I'm not myopic enough to believe that my 2 children who are 2 years apart are perfect angels. But at the same time, I want to ensure that my child, who, if you indeed build in fall of 2017, would be the first full class. I think, maybe, I don't know. He's in 2nd grade now. I don't want him to grow up too fast because he is exposed to, you know, older kids or whatever and stuff maybe he should know about, and probably already does. Excuse me, here. That's all right. So here are the questions that I did have. One was, you mentioned the principal of Briscoe talked about the 5-6, 7-8 configuration with the 5-6 and the 7-8 being substantially separate. The 5-6 would have a 2-teacher team, and the 7-8 would have a 4-person team. Why the difference?
From a developmental standpoint, we think it's a nice way for the grade 5 and 6 students to begin the transition into that 4-person team. As we currently have in the district, there are schools that have 2-person teams, there have schools that have just 1 teacher. This provides some consistency with what we'll be able to do within the district and within the school. We'll also increase communication amongst the grade 5 and 6 staff. At the same time, we get to transition, go to the upper school model for a 4-person teams in preparation for, it's kind of weird to talk about, thinking about high school, where they're going to be dealing with multiple teachers at those different levels there. So developmentally, we feel it's an honest and fair approach to work with students across that grade span.
Okay. And then my third and fourth questions are kind of tied. And I know, and it's a concern more than a question, and that is, it sounds like there's a lot of moving parts and you're not sure exactly, you know, whether there's going to be recess for the 5th graders, as there currently would be now, what the extended care options might be if you went to this model. Those are big issues for us as parents. So I would hope that instead of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, and I'm not going to, but instead of jumping into something and not thinking about all the component parts, that you really do think through some of those things. So that's more of a concern. And the question, this is for the school committee, on February 26th, you're all going to get together and decide on which configuration you want to move forward with. Will you talk to us as parents about why you've made the choice that you've made, and maybe talk about some of these tangential issues like recess and aftercare?
A couple of thoughts, and I'll hand it to the school committee president. You know, once we take that vote, we're going to have roughly 3 years plus to sort through, you know, if it is 5 to 8, to sort through how, whether the value, whether we put a value on recess so that we need to fit it in, you know, as an example. There's certainly be lots of opportunity to work towards that and to have parental input as we go. But let me hand it to President Manzan.
Thank you. Thanks for your question. John, 6 or 7 years ago, I was you. I had a kid in 1st, 2nd grade, and the future looked, you know, long and scary. But in my time on the school committee here, I've come to realize that you give these people a problem, you give these people a challenge, and you give them time to work on it, and you're going to get the best solution for the whole district. And so I have no doubt whatsoever when we start talking about what the school's going to look like, how many classrooms, where are the common spaces, how lunch is going to work, how recess is going to work, how after-school care is going to work. We have a group of professional administrators who are excellent at solving these kind of problems. And so I'm confident. I'm confident, I'm saying as a school committee member, as a parent of a student in this district, I'm confident that these people can rise to those challenges. And then secondly, we are nothing but open to discussion about these and any issues that face the district. And so I would certainly hope that we have the time to talk about why we made the decision we did, and then moving forward, what does it mean for the next step, and then the step after that, and the step after that. And we certainly want all of you involved in that discussion all the way through. And so by all means, this is the beginning of the discussion tonight for this particular decision. It's not the end of it. By the 26th of February, the 7 of us will have hopefully come to some sort of conclusion individually, and then as a committee as to what the most broad outline of this middle school is going to look like. And so after that decision is made, by all means, we're going to talk about it. And we're going to answer your questions, and we're going to be accessible, because that's what we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the things you talked about when you looked at other districts and the effectiveness of the 5, 6, 7, 8 model or the 6, 7, 8 model is you found that a major principal a vice principal for the 5-6, and a vice principal for the 7-8 was the most effective leadership model. To the school committee, do we have the budget for those additional resources?
We already have that.
Okay. Okay.
So, let me just very quickly. So currently, at the middle school, we have Principal Matt Posca and 2 very capable assistant principals. And so it doesn't take much imagination to say we can use the same staff to address the issues of the 5-8 middle school.
Okay. And my last question, and then I'll leave it to other people who have important questions. And it's a question probably every voter and taxpayer in Beverly would like to know. Is there a cost difference? And if so, what is it between the 5, 6, 7, 8 and the 6, 7, 8, 9? And I'll leave you to.
Well, a couple things on that. If we decide to build a 6, 7, 8 middle school, that'll have a lesser cost than a 5 through 8 middle school, but we'll almost assuredly need to then build additions on at least some of our elementary schools. And I think our sense is that it would be more cost effective, and I think those are some assumptions we're looking at, trying to reinforce with real numbers. That the cost of including grade 5 in a new middle school would be less, maybe significantly less than multiple additions on our existing elementary schools to address the very real space inadequacies that are going to become more and more apparent at that elementary school level. To give you a number on what we have projected, and these are all projections, and they're based on cost per square foot of building schools now that from time to time. But projection of roughly $3.9 million cost to the district of including grade 5 in a middle school as compared to a grade 6. But as I said, our sense is that would be less, perhaps significantly less than having to do several additions. Anyone else want to speak to that question?
So let me just add one thing, and I promise I'll sit down, because you don't have to. So one of my goals as a member of the school committee, and I think we all share this, and many of you do as well. When you decide to do something for the community, whether it's PTO or whether it's the school committee, part of your goal should be leaving the place better than when you showed up. And so anyone who's been at the Hannah School for any numbers of years can go in the library and look at the efforts of the volunteers who made that fantastic place. Those parents left it better than when they showed up. And that's my goal as school committee president, as a school committee member. When I'm done, I want to be able to look at Beverly and public schools and say, I helped a bit, and hopefully it looks better than when we started. And by building a 5-8 middle school, not only do we create a fantastic state-of-the-art middle school for our students, but we also help with some of the other problems that we have in the district, such as the ones that Stacy was referring to about space in the elementary schools. And so this is a project for the middle school, yes, but it's a project for Beverly as a whole, because it's going to leave the whole district in a much better place than when we started. And that, I think, is a good goal to have.
And before you ask your question quickly, our colleague, our Ward 4 School Committee member, Matt Kavanaugh, is here, and I know he's yours, for many of you. A lot of Ward 4 people here. Thanks for being able to join us tonight.
My name is Jennifer Donnelly, and I live in 11 Yankee Way. My question is about the class sizes. In the 10 years that I've lived here, I've seen schools close. Now we're at capacity everywhere, and I understand that. So I'm wondering, with the new middle school, because you talked a bit about like population projections for students, what would you be looking at in terms of student-teacher ratios within a 5 through 8 model? And then if we kept 5th grade in the elementary schools, what would you be looking at for student-teacher ratio with the 5th grade and then with the 6th through 8? I'm just kind of curious about what the difference would be. Because I don't have any idea what you're dealing with now.
Sure. When we discuss the potential of what this could be, right now we have 4-person teams in grade 6. what we'd be doing is taking those four-person teams, making them two-person teams. With the addition of the grade 5 staff coming up, so now we'd have grade 5 staff coming up in supplementing what we currently have. So we potentially be having, that's how we came with those two-person teams in grade 5 and 6. The goal is to have approximately on or about 45 to 50 students on those two-person teams, ideally in those settings.
So 20 to 25 per classroom. Okay.
Correct. And then the grade 7 and 8 is very similar to what we currently have. You know, we're probably a little higher than 100, but again, that class size averaging in grade 7 and 8 is probably around 25, and probably around that area as well.
I can give you a little more information. When we were at MSBA last week, our enrollment projections over the next decade are kind of flatlined. And if you saw the Globe North today, they talked about Beverly by 2030 having a 6% increase in population. We presently have 15 fifth grade teachers, and they're looking at each grade to be about 350 students. So 15 to 350 is probably like a 21 to 22 to 1 ratio. So today it would be around 21 to 22 to 1. Okay?
Thanks.
And one thing we have seen is that it's inconsistent, and the principals can say that from the elementary schools, that there might be years that you have, you might have a group, say, just 34 fifth graders, so you're going to have 2 classes of 17, but at another school, you might have 2 classes of 29. And by doing this, you're really going to be able to even off those numbers, and it potentially saves on staff, because so if you can save 1 teacher that way, it's, you know, it's $65,000 that we can use for something else. And so it's also just more equitable. You know, if you're a parent and your child's in a class of 29 and you talk to your friend over at whatever the other school is there, but there's no way for us to level that off for you. We always say to people, well, if you don't like the class of 28, and we understand we don't like that either, you certainly have the opportunity to go to another school where they have lower class size. But this really does help with that, and that's what we find from grade 6 through grade 12, the class size, as much as possible, is more even and regular.
The last question I had, and you probably cannot answer this question at this time, but what percentage of building a new middle school would fall to the city of Beverly itself, and what percentage is coming from this state department?
Well, they have that here?
Yes.
So roughly 52% is the baseline of what the state will pay, and we're able to target some specific, what do they call those? Discretionary additional points. If we're able to attain a green certification, we can get a couple extra percentage points. If we have a strong capital maintenance plan, extra percentage points. So we're hopeful to get as much as 55 or 56% of the cost paid by the state. The balance would be paid by us.
So then the rest falls to the city, which then the taxpayers.
Correct, and that's part of our, and in fact, I've been working on it this week with my finance director and others. We have to present annually to the city council an update to our capital finance plan. And when you look at that capital finance plan, when you get out to FY 2016 and beyond, we're starting to spend money on the middle school as we project, bonding for first the feasibility study work and then the construction.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm Rebecca. I'm at 12 Warren Street. I was actually the last 6th grade class at Hannah, and my mother went to high school at Briscoe, and I ultimately went to Memorial or Briscoe for middle school.
Can you go closer to the mic?
I also went to Briscoe for middle school, and I can appreciate that building has seen many days, and it's ready. I think it's helpful when you explain to people that aren't educators, separating 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. That part I think is really helpful, and at some point I will have a 5th and an 8th grader, but they're not there now, so it's hard to foresee what they're like. And I think my question is about the emotional piece. I've heard a lot about, well, the preschool question sort of that I have. One of the things that we've imposed with preschool is if it were potentially moved to the memorial site, would that drug recovery high school be part of that building still? I don't know. I mean, that was where the preschoolers are now.
Currently, we have preschoolers at Memorial, and we have
Right.
preschoolers at the collaborative building up the hill from the high school on Sawyer Road.
Right.
You want to speak to that? Sure.
I can speak to that. You're talking about the recovery program. That's part of the collaborative. It's not a Beverly Public Schools program, but we're part of the Ed Consortium Collaborative. They're not considered in this project. Preschool has not been considered part of the middle school project. They're on site at the middle school right now, as we also have a program up on Sawyer Road right now because we're lacking in space. We've talked over the past couple of years of going back to McEwen and placing our preschool program there. And so that is a discussion that's happening and hopefully will come to fruition. So we can have all of our preschoolers at one site. So, you know, because right now what happens, and many of you probably experienced it, and Anne Marie Chase, talked to it earlier, our preschool program has been very transient over the years. I don't think there's been a year for a number of years where we haven't moved a preschool classroom. Over the past 2 years, we've moved full programs, multiple classrooms. So
Not so much the preschool are my concern. It's will that drug recovery high school remain?
no, the consortium, it's a consortium program, and the consortium is working on looking at their programs and locations for programs. So they would not be part of that.
Said another way, the consortium is renting space from us at McEwen for many of they've got a high school age program in McEwen, and that lease runs through a year from June. I don't know what the lease is on the Recovery High School's program at Memorial, but certainly when we need to vacate Memorial to either renovate, add on, or tear down and rebuild, the consortium will need to find another home.
So they
for
would not be
no.
No. That was a tricky thing, and part of my decision as a preschool parent to not go there. So I would feel uncomfortable in middle school, and it's not that I'm against it, it's just, it's a little too close. So thank you. My one other question is really about the emotional piece. I heard a lot about the pros, and I just wonder, I don't really want to call them cons for sending a fifth grader, but I was middle December. I graduated high school at 17. I started college at 17, and I think even some of these very young, you know, like when they could officially first start at their September, these are young children. I felt very young even within the grade that I was in, and I was the first child. So I think my daughter will be very different than my son maybe, or you may have first children that are maybe possibly more timid than a more confident one who has older siblings to kind of learn. So I don't really want to call them cons, but because I don't really know what are some concerns you have probably thought about with putting fifth grade, even though you have fifth and sixth and seventh and eighth. What are those concerns? I've heard a lot of positive, but I'm just wondering, there must be some thoughts that you had along the way.
My name is Lorinda. I'm new to the school committee, but I'm not new to being a mom, and I actually currently have a third grader, a seventh grader, if I get this wrong, I'll get in big trouble, a 10th grader, and a 12th grader. So from that perspective that you're talking about, and that some children are ready and some children, quote unquote, are not, I have an incredible gamut in between my 4 children. And I would say to you, when my oldest child was in first grade, so he was my first, I had to put him on a bus to go over to McKay, thank you, to go over to McKay because they were renovating Centerville. And so at that point in time, first graders, kindergartners were getting on a bus with fifth graders and going across town. And it's not a short drive. It wasn't a short drive then, it's not a short drive now. To go to school all day long, to then come back. So from that perspective, I feel like I've already done that, and I did it with my first child. And as Stacy said, children are incredibly resilient. It's usually the parents that have a little bit more of a problem with it. But to talk to your specific question about the cons, Kathy Whitehair and I made a trip to Natick, and it's probably like the model. It's although I hear Linfield is incredibly nice, Natick was, you couldn't find a negative there. But one of the schools that I was assigned to call and investigate, right, and query about was Lowell. And in the Lowell School District, they have 8 middle schools. And those 8 middle schools, each of the administrators would like to take the 5th graders and put them back down because they don't feel that they're doing well, and they're actually seeing a dip in their 5th grade MCAS scores. But then when I dug into that some more, their 5th graders are actually being put into a 5 or 6 teacher team. They're being expected to switch classes every single class. They're being treated as if they're an upper middle schooler. They have just a tremendous amount of homework. The schedules are not coordinated as some other people spoke about. So everybody's in the hallway at the same time. Everybody's in the common space at the same time. So those 5th graders are really overwhelmed, as are some of the 6th graders. So when Chris talked about, we know we need to be mindful of these things, part of the reason why we know we need to be mindful is because we've called a whole bunch of school districts and we've said what works well, what doesn't work well. And so for me, I actually, in a more scientific way, I was happy to actually hear from the school district that said we're not happy and this is why we're not happy and here's the actual problems. And it just so happened that it was perfect in the sense that those problems align with what we had learned, like they're the opposite of what we learned is good, and the school systems where it is really working.
Thanks.
My name is Tina Doherty. I live on 40 Parramatta Road. I had a couple of comments and a question. First, I wanted to say that I appreciate the dialogue that you're giving our city the opportunity to have about this, because it hasn't been so transparent up until now. When this first was starting, it seemed like it kind of just hit us in the air and planned out. It was kind of shocking. So I appreciate that. My other comment is regarding Mr. Posca. You had said that the Wakefield schools in 5th grade, the 5-6 model, it helped the 5th graders to mature more quickly. As a parent, I don't want my 5th grader to mature more. And I teach elementary school art, K-5, so I'm mid-year with 5th graders, and I see the maturity changing at this time of year, but I still feel like they're so young. And I have a kindergartner and a 3rd grader now, so I'll have a 5th grader and an 8th grader, so I'll, totally affects me. My question was that in the past, there has been talk, which I haven't heard anything or seen anything about recently, talk about when we free up the space in the elementary schools, closing Hannah, not closing it, but making it a kindergarten and pre-K. Like I said, this is maybe 2 years ago when this whole process started. So I was concerned that they would further consolidate the schools. So I don't know if that's still something that's been talked about.
That hasn't been part of any conversation. I think if one of the concerns we have is the lack of space now, so we don't have room to consolidate buildings at this time because it would defeat the purpose of opening up the space for our needs currently. So that I know throughout the years, there's been lots of talk about repurposing or consolidating, but that's not on the table at this point, nor have any discussions regarding that come up at all. Because really, the push is to provide more space to provide better services for the students we have at the elementary level.
Okay. Also, the pre-K program that I think you had mentioned, perhaps taking back McEwen. Is that like a good possibility that could happen? I know that the consortium now leases it for $500,000 a year, which seems like we could do better with that.
If I had my way, the preschool would move there. There is discussion about it, and definitely there are things we need to consider. They do rent the space, so it is revenue for the district. So that's something we need to take into consideration. But at the same time, we need a space for our preschoolers. And I think it's really important to me, and I think to a lot of people, we got to stop moving them around. It's not fair to have a preschooler do multiple schools within a 3-year period of time with us, to then transition to a kindergarten, and to potentially have another transition to another school for first grade. So, you know, the other piece too is, if we have all of our preschoolers together rather than separating them out, there's more opportunity for collaboration and more developmentally appropriate programs happening for them at the preschool level. So that's kind of one of the things that's been my push, is to really consider moving the preschool to the middle school. The lease is up in a 1.5 years with the consortium between them utilizing McEwen School, between the Recovery High, and between us utilizing the space up at KMG. So there's been a lot of discussion regarding that.
And Tina, we have other needs. We've got a lot of people situated at Memorial. We have all our school department central office staff at Memorial. We've got a fair amount of city department staff there. Criminal investigations for the police department, municipal inspections, community development, veterans agent. We've got a lot over there. And when we do start construction, we'll need to find a home for all of them. And so, as Ms. Busick said, maybe pre-K to McEwen, maybe central office staff to McEwen, maybe both can be accommodated there. And then, as I said, on the municipal side, we still have to find a place for some other departments because City Hall's not big enough. So there are a lot of things that we'll be kind of balancing and trying to fit.
Tina and John, is John still here? Yeah. I just wanted to address the concern about, I don't want my 5th grader to grow up too fast. I don't want my 9th grader to grow up too fast. I don't want any kid to grow up too fast. What's that?
It's 2 ladies in 10th.
Oh, that's right, he's in 10th grade. You're watching Eli, I know. Anyway, that's a big concern, and all along the way, in speaking with principals of various districts, they prepared us for that question. Well, they told us that question would come, and as a mom, of course, that question is there, right? So the principal in Linfield said to us, one of the things he likes about his building is that his 5th and 6th graders stay younger, but his 7th and 8th graders also stay younger. Kind of the whole group of kids stay younger because there's younger things going on at the 5th and 6th grade level. He could probably explain it a whole lot more, and we may have somebody from Linfield here towards the end of the forums. And then I also spoke to the woman who was the principal at She was the principal at Belmont. She's since retired, and she's doing an interim something or other in Westwood. I'm trying to keep all these districts straight. We had a lot of them. But she said the same thing. She said, you know, it was really nice to see that the kids stayed younger. So those were 2 examples of where things were working well, and they had planned it out well enough that they thought that, you know, that wasn't as big a concern as we as parents might have thought it would be. And the retired principal who I spoke to in Westwood, she helped Belmont transition from a 6 to 8 middle school to a 5 to 8 middle school. So we spent a lot of time on the phone talking about that whole transition process and how to help everybody feel comfortable about it, and also how to kind of get this input from, parents in the community about how to do this the best way we know how. And so we've learned a lot, but I would imagine as we go forward, the superintendent and principal of the middle school will still be learning from these districts who are doing it well and using them. And they've been extremely generous with their time with us, and they've been extremely generous giving us information and helping us learn, because this is a first for us in government.
Thanks, Steve. Anybody else? Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve McCarthy, and I live at 9 Cleveland Road. I have about 25 questions, and I was able to reduce it to about 4. So I don't even know if I'm old enough to be here and asking any questions. I have a 5-year-old, so. But a couple things I just want to quickly ask. I wonder if someone can just tell me the whole purpose of this. Is it a space issue? Is it a budget issue? Is it to reduce class sizes? Is it what's best for kids? What would you give me as just the purpose? It has very, very concise, clear purpose for investigating this and doing this.
Well, the quick answer is, of course, yes to everything. What we need to do is we need to address all of those concerns. We have, as Al likes to say, we have a 100-year-old middle school, which isn't really 100 years old, that needs to be replaced. There's very little debate about building a new middle school. So the question before us is, what is it going to look like? And whether or not in creating a new middle school, we also solve some of the other issues that we currently have as a district. And that, of course, has been a space issue at the elementary building that Stacy referred to. And so, yes, it's about money, it's about space, it's about education, it's about social and emotional needs. It's about all of those things. And we're trying to address as many of those across the district, middle school, elementary school, and actually it's going to feed into the high school as well while we're doing this. Is that kind of
so what would be the priority? Which one is the #1 priority?
Can I interrupt? I'm sorry. I think what's something that's important to remember, it's not about issues, it's about opportunities. I think there's multiple opportunities across the district and at every grade level, whether we're talking elementary or the middle school. And it starts with, we have an outdated middle school, and we have problems at the middle school that need to be fixed. We have the opportunity to build a new middle school. So what does that opportunity look like, and how can we better or improve on the great things that are already happening? So I think if we're looking at it that way, moving the 5th graders up to the middle school, it opens up a lot more opportunities for them. And Mr. Posca talked to that earlier, just in regards to the variety of programming options that would be available to them that aren't there at the elementary level. So I just think if we twist it and turn it a little and just think not issues but opportunities.
Yeah, and this has already been alluded to too, but there's been so many success stories. I think pretty much everybody is saying we should do this. But I'm sure there are districts that have done it and then decided, you know what, we need to turn back. We need to go back to 6 to 8. And I think that really needs to be addressed and told us, some investigation of that side of the argument too.
And I'm sure there's some schools out there, but one of the schools that I was assigned to speak to was in Fitchburg. And they currently have a 5-to-8 model, and they've had opportunities to go back and go 6 to 8. But now they're rebuilding a new 5 to 8 school because they see success in the program. And I think it reflects what Chris has been saying. If you design the building well, then you can actually create a program that's more successful than if you just kind of cram a bunch of kids together in a building and hope that it works out. So I've seen personally, I've spoken to people who have had that opportunity to go back and they decided not to because the program works for them.
The other issue too I'm thinking about is having content knowledge teachers for the 5th graders and the 6th graders. Having just 2 content, someone who teaches both history and English, and then someone who teaches, the science and the math. It's much better to have someone teaching one subject who's a specialized person who has a degree in that content area and who can teach that content area. And I think that's what they do right now, right? In the 6th grade, there's four teachers, like content teachers. Yeah. So going forward, you're going to say to the 6th graders, this one teacher teaches you 2 subjects, this one teacher teaches you 2 subjects. And I don't, is that true or no? Is that what you're thinking about doing to 5th and 6th graders?
That is the discussion that we have on the table, is to support what's going on in those 2-person teams. There's the content knowledge, which I believe is very, very important, but it's also the knowledge of the teacher who's working with those students at that age level and understanding what those students are going through at that time. And those staff who are trained to do that, it's a 1 to 6 license, so they understand how those students develop at that time. So there's kind of 2 issues, the content issue that you talked about, which was a concern, but that's also in addition to the support that those students, those staff give to those students at that age level, which is appropriate.
Okay.
Wait before we start again. So I mentioned earlier that one of the schools that I called and interrogated was not happy with the 5 through 8 model, and they are considering pushing their 5s back down. And part of the reason why they're not happy is because the children do, in fact, get a specialized teacher for every subject. And at 5th and they said even at 6th grade, they're not ready for that. They're not ready to have 6 different teachers during a day. So there's, it's not all rosy, and that's why I personally was kind of happy that I drew out of the hat a school that quote-unquote bucked the system. Somewhat interesting in Lowell, they also have a K through 8. They have 2 schools that are K through 8. So in their 5 through 8, they are seeing the MCAS drop with the 5th graders, but they're not seeing that in the schools that are K through 8. So again, I spoke with someone, even though that was a little outside of our objective. I spoke to someone at the K through 8 and talked about what's different, why are they not seeing that drop? And again, they aligned with the schools that we've seen that are successful. So they have 2 teacher teams, and they do that through 5 and 6. They isolate those children, and they're seeing very good scores in those 2 schools compared to the 8 middle schools that are the 5 through 8 model.
I just want to add my 2 cents here too, because one of the other models we saw or heard about, or I talked to a principal on the phone about, I guess, is in the particular school, they kept their 5th graders in a self-contained classroom with 1 teacher. And then in grade 6 went to two teacher teams, and then in grade 7 and 8 went to 4 teacher teams. The principal admitted scheduling challenges and, for a good reason. But I think it speaks to meeting the kids where they are developmentally and making sure that we're paying attention to that. And those are things like Mr. Posca said, these are questions that are on the table that need to be worked out before we actually, walk into the school, obviously. There was one more thing I wanted to say. When we were talking about challenges, I got a kind of seemed like a random phone call from a principal. We had touched base with him, left messages with him, and asked him to respond to our questions. And he said, I'm calling you because I'm going to answer the questions on email like I was requested to do. And he said, but I feel compelled to call you and tell you something. And I said, okay, spill. And he said he has a 5 to 8 middle school that he's the administrator of, and the challenges in his school, he feels, are the challenges that are in every middle school. So, when we talk about challenges, there are challenges with every age of kid and, every level of education. There was one more thing that'll come back to me later. So.
And my last question here, as far as assessing students, how are middle school students assessed versus elementary students? Do middle school students get letter grades and elementary students get like a standards-based report card, and then we're going to be telling the 5th graders, well, here's your letter grade because now you're in this middle school model, or how is that all going to work?
That's not for me to answer, but I will say one quick thing. The question of self-contained, 2 teachers, 4 teachers, I don't know that those decisions have to be made in 2014, in the spring, as we're looking to make the basic grade configuration decision, I think a lot of these are things that can be worked through, and as President Manzo said earlier, we're going to want that dialogue to involve you all the way through. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. On Steve's last question, in terms of assessing, how we do assess, how we would.
I think you answered the question very well. There's another discussion that we haven't had this time, but to answer, there is the standards-based report card currently at the elementary level, and at the middle school level we have letter grades.
Thanks, Steve. I thought of some more questions.
Yeah, I thought of one more.
Well, again, I'm John Taylor, and I live at 41 Cole Street in Ward 6. This question is for the adjustment counselor who kindly came and has spent all night here sitting. So we talked about the best, or rather one type of staffing model on the 5 to 8 with the principal and the 2 vice principals, and how you replicate that. How would you handle the adjustment issues? We value at Hannah our adjustment counselor, and I know throughout the district that's true. I would imagine there would be a greater need for an adjustment counselor at that 5 to 6 level if those first 5th graders haven't had the experience of following someone to the middle school, and it's just what we do.
And I think I'll also refer to Mr. Posca. And I appreciate your support of adjustment counselors. We appreciate that. Yes, I do think that our role in schools is critical and really important, and definitely with the transition with 5th graders going to a bigger school, per se, in terms of the age. There would be a need certainly for counselors. At this time, at the middle school, there is 1.5.
There's 1.5, and we've asked the school committee to expand that to 2 full-time adjustment counselors for this next upcoming year, along with 3 guidance counselors.
So I do think that the needs are met at the middle school level, and certainly I assume that would be a big component going forward, making sure that there was enough staffing around our role in schools, particularly for the middle school.
I just would like to add one item from the superintendent's standpoint. The American Guidance Association and social adjustment counselors, 300 to 1 is the ratio. So if I was here in 2018, I'd be recommending 4 people, 1 for each grade, guidance / social emotional, because it's a 300 to 1 ratio. That's the present standard that schools throughout the United States utilize. And any accreditation process would tell you that it's a 300 to 1 ratio.
We can wrap this up. That's fine. Okay, Councilor Hausman.
Yes, Councilor Ward. My question really is about process. Unless we have someone taking minutes or perhaps a transcription for folks who are unable to make the meetings or perhaps don't get BevCam. Will there be some attempt to sort of summarize the questions and answers that are given this evening and some of the others, and put those online so that people who want to browse at their own schedule would be able to sort of get a sense of the discussion outside of these meetings? Thank you.
How many columns can you get?
Are you going to
They'll give you the whole
one?
front page above and below the fold. It's a good point, Council, and I think let's kind of think on that and figure out how to get the points and issues and questions and concerns raised here in front of people.
Chris Silverstein had mentioned when she first put up that all school committee members have email anyone in the school committee members, email us on the handout. Specifically, you can attend any one of the meetings. You don't have to attend the meeting where you're that's your ward school, or your children are in school, you can go to, we have a 9 a.m. meeting next Friday. We have 6 o'clock meeting, 6:30 meeting, 7 o'clock, and you can email any one of us. And when they're over, Stephanie Walters, who's scribing, will put one packet together for everyone so that any question that we couldn't answer at any one of the meetings, we'll research and get the answer, and then probably, I would think on the school website, we could post a composite of the meetings and questions.
I think that makes, as we hear the kind of the common concerns, questions, issues raised, we'll try to do that. That makes good sense. Okay. So, yeah.
Yeah, the BevCam website also has an on-demand feature where all of these are accessible on your computer. You know, you don't have to get BevCam.
So and BevCam is going to be filming at least some of these forums, so people can go on their own computer and go to your website and just watch them on demand. Okay. So you know, one thing that I've been hearing is, as we're considering 6 to 8 and 5 to 8, we reached out and established some connections and relationships with some other districts. So certainly, if the decision is to go 5 to 8, we will. I would think we would all make a strong effort to follow up on those relationships and take advice and counsel and learn everything that we can, again, if that's the way we go. Thanks so much for spending your time here this evening. As Dr. Argenziano said, I believe it's next Thursday night is the next forum. The following morning, Friday, is our one morning forum. And then the following week, February 11th and 13th, are the last two. And you know, one last time, at the Centerville Forum, which is the morning, the 9 a.m. forum, a week from tomorrow, and at the two forums on the 11th and the 13th, at all three of those, we will have administrators from some of the districts who are 5 to 8 and who can, you know, from their own experience, speak to some of the things raised. So thanks again for being here. Thanks to all of my colleagues, and have a wonderful night.